It turns out that even the people who bought the pitch are starting to read the fine print. Rural America, the heart of Trump's base, is beginning to look around and ask a pretty uncomfortable question. What exactly do we get out of all this? For years, Donald Trump promised rural, working class Americans that he alone could fix things, that he'd bring back jobs, rebuild towns, punish the elites, and make Washington listen to the so called forgotten man. But go talk to the folks in small town America today, and you'll hear something new in their voices. Regret. Not everywhere, not from everyone, but enough to matter. Jobs haven't come back, the hospitals are still closing, the cost of living is still climbing, and the factories that were supposed to return, they never did. The coal mines didn't reopen, the main streets didn't revive, the opioid crisis didn't end. What rural America got instead was a politician who made a spectacle of their pain and left them holding the bag. So let's break this down. Trump ran as a populist outsider, someone who was going to shake up the system, drain the swamp, and stick it to the elites. And for a lot of struggling communities, that message hit hard. After decades of being ignored by both parties, Trump felt like a wrecking ball aimed at a rigged system. But once dust settled, what was left? Tax cuts for billionaires, deregulation for big corporations, and a culture war designed to distract people from the fact that their towns are still dying, and no one's doing a damn thing about it. In short, Trump took rural America's pain, packaged it into a brand, and sold it back to them as identity politics, wrapped in red hats and grievance. And it worked, for a while. But you can't feed your family on slogans. You can't rebuild your community with cable news rants. You can't fix broken economy by demonizing immigrants or blaming woke college kids for why the local mill shut down. People are starting to connect the dots. They're noticing that the richest man they ever voted for somehow convinced them that he was one of them. They were noticing that while he played the role of the blue-collar billionaire, he lived in a gold-plated tower, made by his money stuffing contractors, and staffed his administration with bankers and cronies. And they're noticing that every time he had a chance to invest in their lives, he passed. Rural voters are no longer asking, is Trump better than Biden? They're asking, did he do anything for us at all? Because look, these voters aren't stupid. They know when they're being used, and a growing number of them are realizing that while Trump gave them a voice, he never gave them results. Their hospitals are still 45 minutes away, if they're open at all. Their kids are still leaving town because there's no future there. Broadband is still spotty, wages are still low, and the only people cashing in are lobbyists, hedge fund managers, and the cable news grifters riding the Trump train for profit. Now here's the thing. This isn't just about Trump. It's about a broken political system where both parties have at times failed rural America. It's about economic policies that favor cities and coasts while leaving the middle hollowed out. It's about the decades of deindustrialization, automation, and neglect have left these communities in a slow, grinding collapse. But what Trump did was weaponize that pain. He didn't fix it, he exploited it. And now that some of his most loyal voters are starting to see the game for what it is, the Republican Party should be very, very nervous. Because when your entire strategy is based on resentment, eventually people look up and ask, resentment for what? If the factories didn't reopen, if the schools didn't improve, if the family farm is still underwater, then what was the point? It's like selling someone a car with no engine and convincing them that it's a dealership's fault when it doesn't start. At some point, you're going to get called out for being a fraud. And let's be honest, Trumpism was never about building anything. It was about tearing things down, tearing down the trust in institutions, tearing down norms, tearing down facts, truth, and any sense of collective responsibility. That might work in the short road, but it doesn't pave roads, doesn't create jobs, and it sure as hell doesn't build the future. So what now? The cracks are showing. Trump supported some rural areas softening, not because some people have become liberal, but because they've started to see the con. They want healthcare, not culture war, jobs, not gimmicks, hope, not hatred. If Democrats were smart, they'd seize this moment, not with more focus group platitudes, but with real investment, real policy, and real presence in these places. Rural America doesn't want to be pitied. It wants to be prioritized. And if no one steps up to do that, well, the disillusionment will grow. And maybe the next con artist who shows up won't be content to just lie. Maybe they'll try to break democracy entirely. The clock is ticking. Because rural America may be slow to anger, but once it turns, it doesn't forget. And if Trump loses the people who are convinced he was their savior, there's no comeback tour for that.